Let's get started. Welcome to ThursdAI, everyone. I hope your Thursday is going as great as my Thursday is going. There's a ton of stuff that we have to cover today, and including some breaking news from DeepMind, specifically literally just dropping a couple of minutes ago. And I think it's time to get started. I think that it's great that I already see a bunch of comments dropping on the bottom right in the comments. We have a few guests as well, and a lot of big company news this week, a lot of big raises. I don't know, let's maybe do a little bit of banter before we get to the TLDR. For folks who are new here, we do a little bit of a TLDR. So basically, all of the news that we're going to talk about for the next 2 hours, I do a little bit of a super quick run through all of them, so that if you don't have the time to sit with us for 2 hours, obviously it's Thursday, maybe you need to work, no blame there. You'll know what we'll talk about, so you'll be caught up. And we'll also do this at the end, so if you step in the middle, you're always going to be caught up as well. If you're new here as well, ThursdAI is not only a live show, this is a newsletter, a weekly newsletter that you can sign up for and get everything that we talk about here, including the links and the show notes as well in your email if you prefer to read, for example, not listen, and a podcast as well. So you can subscribe to a podcast and not have to necessarily be here for the live show. Although the live show is better, you get to experience all the technical kinks and the little conversations that I do sometimes edit out of the podcast, because I use AI to help me edit. And I ask AI to be a very strict editor. I actually use some of Nissan's tricks, and I put it in like role-playing mode of a very strict Soviet era strict editor. And it tells me often that the banter that we do here doesn't need to be, and I need to cut it down and there's too much banter. And so sometimes I do cut it down. So if you are on the live show, you're experiencing the liveliness of the conversation. So let's do some of this banter. Do you guys want to talk about Ilya's $1 billion startup that's 3 months old? $1 billion first raise? Nissan, what's your take on SSI Inc. raising $1 billion?
It's a free market at the end of the day. And I think the beautiful thing about the industry is that there isn't so much regulation, and that has been a good thing. We've seen so much innovation. So if this thing happens to be that whatever model they make gets replaced by something that runs on a Raspberry Pi, that's the way it was meant to be. But if they manage to pull off something, because remember, most of us, including majorly myself, were pretty wrong about calling out Mistral AI for how much they raised. But Mistral shipped, and we all use what they shipped, and it was very good code. So we could still be
we're
wrong.
scrolling back to the year before, like exactly a year before, where Mistral, out of nowhere, 3 guys raised like $300-something million with no product. And we were like, what? That makes no sense. And then they shipped a couple of months later with the 7 billion parameter model that like blew everyone away for the next 6 months. This is the currency we were speaking about.
Yeah. And they also have one of the best practical large models, Mistral Large, that you can run on your own and you can fine tune on your own. And that's like the most useful one you can run at home. So it might be that Ilya's company also ships too, but if they don't, then the market will fix it. We might be getting a bit saturated. I would say that is my opinion. But again, you never know. There's still so much to do in terms of architectures to explore and stuff in the field that they might be able to pull something off.
So for context, for folks who are listening to us and have no idea what we're talking about, Ilya Sutskever, previously chief scientist and co-founder of OpenAI, announced previously his new company, SSI Inc., Safe Superintelligence Inc., a company he's co-founded with Daniel Gross, a very prolific AI investor, together with Nat Friedman, and also Daniel Gross. And they basically said that fundraising is not going to be their problem, which they proved this week by raising a $1 billion round for many Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, SV Angel, like a bunch of other people. Ryan, what's your take on this? Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me up. Excited for the show today. I thought it was interesting that Daniel Gross is the CEO, because everyone who's been following the space has seen how much Nat Friedman and Daniel Gross how much capital they poured into AI. They built one of the largest AI clusters before Elon. So I think it's interesting he's CEO. So I'm curious how that plays out. And I think the other interesting thing is that they stated publicly they're going to build for 2 years before they ship anything publicly. So it'd be fun to see how that shakes out. Thoughts from me?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's stated necessarily that they're not going to be bothered by like the constraints of shipping product. I think that's how they called it. All right, folks, I think it's time for some TLDR, and then we're going to get started. Here is the TLDR, everything we've talked about on ThursdAI for September 5th show, the first fall show for ThursdAI. And we had a great show with a bunch of guests. So we started the show, as always, with open source news. And we started the show with talking with Nuo, our new friend from 01 AI, about YiCoder 1.5B and 9 billion parameters. YiCoder is a new model from 01 AI, which released 2 versions of YiCoder. We had a nice conversation with Nuo about why and how they released them and what was special about those models. They have 128K context window. They outperform CodeQuen 1.5 and they rival DeepSeek Coder 33B. Very interesting conversation. We then chatted with Eugene, Pico creator, the maintainer and chairman of RWKV. This week, Eugene found out that RWKV.cpp binaries were deployed with Windows 10 and Windows 11 to about 1.5 billion devices. And this is one of the largest open source AI distributions in the world right now. The conversation with Eugene is always great. Eugene is very knowledgeable, very energetic, and fun to talk with. And this is an open source Apache 2 license. WKV is the first AI that's under the Linux Foundation, deployed to 1.5 billion devices, is used likely for the Windows recall feature and for the Windows Copilot, the local Copilot that launches with Windows. And finally, we chatted with Niklas from Elon Institute for AI. Niklas was the lead author on the paper and the release of OLMoE, which is the MoE version of OLMoE. The tagline for it is the first good MoE, which is 100% open source. And by 100% open source, they mean 100% open source. Everything was released from model weights to training data to code, including logs, which they used weights and biases for. So yeah, you have the 1B.ai links from Allen Institute for AI, which you can see all of the training runs and the loss curves and everything directly from the Allen Institute for AI. They released 244 checkpoints for the pre-trained model, for one for every 5,000 steps. Niklas was very, very knowledgeable and learned a lot about just the state of the art and mixture of experts generally, but also what they learned specifically from this effort, why releasing as much as they release is very important. And what did they find? This model is a 7 billion total parameters and 1 billion active parameter MoE for 64 experts in each layer with 8 experts activated. We also briefly mentioned the MMMU Pro, the more robust multidiscipline multimodal understanding bench. The previous MMMU, the top was for GPT-4o around 70%. Now GPT-4o is around 50%. So the tasks are harder to do, which means it's great because when harder benchmarks are there, the models now need to compete that much harder. So that's always great. So shout out to folks for releasing MMMU Pro. We then covered also Cohere releasing updates to Command R and Command R+. They did this both in the API and they released these models on Hugging Face as well. The highlights of these models is Command R, the updated version for 0824, so for August 24. The new Command R is significantly improved and it's performing as well as the previous Command R+, which is their bigger and smarter model, while being twice faster in latency and twice faster in throughput as well. And the new Command R+ is performing as fast as the previous Command R. So it's reversed. It's very interesting. On the API side, Command R is now 15 cents per 1 million tokens, which is very affordable, very cheap, including structured output for the first time, which is you get reliable JSON generations and better instruction following as well. The folks on stage here, including Wolfram and Ravenwolf and Niston, uploaded Command R plus these 2 models for their use, including some technical challenges right now that are going to get solved soon while running these models locally. Big companies, LLMs and APIs, another new company emerges out of the blue. The number one reason for Anthropic for this conversation was Anthropic releases their enterprise offering with a new and very surprising 500 500,000 tokens in the context window. They're also announcing a bunch of enterprise features like SIM, user provisioning, SSO, and more. They are also offering a native GitHub integration so that folks can talk with their code as well. This is not something that the companies would be able to use via the API and build on top of. This is companies using Claude AI as an interface and then chatting with AI. So they would be able to use features like artifacts and their new integration with GitHub. 500,000 tokens in the context window will let them upload and have conversations with a lot of documents from the company. There's another announcement from Anthropic where Amazon announced that they will start including Anthropic's Claude in Alexa starting this October versus their in-house Titan models. They plan to have this new, quote, remarkable Alexa version via paid subscription between $5 and $10 a month, which will basically include Claude and rival things like ChatGPT Advanced Voice Mode or Gemini Voice offering from Google. A lot of households have an Alexa device, hardware device in their home, and so enabling this will be huge for Anthropic's distribution as well. And last thing for Anthropic, which is not that great. Last week we talked about Anthropic being very transparent with us by showing us system prompts with every new model release. This week, there's mounting evidence, including confirmed evidence from folks like Wolfram Ravenwolf and other folks in comments on our show that Anthropic invisibly sometimes adds instructions to Claude via their interface and also via the API instructions. They basically inject some stuff on top of your instructions, which is very uncool. And we've confirmed from different folks and also from folks on the stage that this is in fact is happening. This is not transparent. We would like the models to respond the way we would like them to respond. Just a shout out to Weights and Biases Weave, the observability tooling that we have. If you want to know that this happens, you definitely need to run some sort of observability. You should use Weave for your production API calls. Moving forward, we talked about Google. Google got structured data outputs, so you can now get reliable JSON outputs for Gemini models via the API, which is great and always welcome. So shout out to Google for this. And also, we talked about Google DeepMind releasing Alpha Proteo paper in breaking news just before the show. Alpha Proteo is their new model following on their work for AlphaFold and AlphaFold 2. And this one is a system for designing novel protein binders. This is the system for how proteins bind to different molecules. They showed that with Alpha Proteo, they achieved 3 to 300-fold better binding affinities, higher experimental success rates than the best models from before. This is a big deal, and I am not nearly smart enough to explain how and why this is a big deal. However, I did forward folks to resources where they could learn more, including 2-minute papers that got first access to Alpha Proteo and had a great video on the topic, and I really recommend you to view this. We also mentioned that Time Magazine had their list of 100 influential people in AI, and this list for some reason includes Indian actors and Scarlett Johansson, so Indian and Hollywood actors as well, and does not include Elon Musk, which seems very biased, specifically because of the other news that we covered this week is that xAI scaled Colossus, which is their largest, and I think largest in general GPU cluster that went online ever. It's 100,000 H100 GPUs in one cluster in their Memphis supercluster. This size of GPU, just for sake of scale for you guys, can train something like a GPT-4 class model in just 4 days. This is an estimate for semi-analysis. According to Elon Musk, this was scaled in 122 days. A friend of mine who works in xAI, he said, just 3 months ago, we toured an empty warehouse in Memphis, and now it's gone online with 100,000 H100s, which is ridiculous. Not only that, Elon Musk claims that it will double in a few months to 200,000, just for sense of scale. So this is a huge deal in the world of AI. Nobody does infrastructure like Space Uncle, and so this puts the fact that Time Magazine not including this person in the list of influential people for AI this year, even more of a dubious decision. So we had a chat about this as well. And lastly, we had breaking news from Replit. Replit is an online environment, coding environment for production-ready things, so you can deploy to production while writing your code as well. We had a breaking news from them that Replit launched their agents in beta. The Replit agents allows you to basically have whatever Cursor has in Cursor, but on a production environment. So this could scale not only your code, but also can deploy this for you. Nistan chimed in that Replit has a mobile interface that's great. And also this will likely be able to build full systems from mobile apps on the go. And this is just incredible. You'd be able to deploy things super easy. So this is a huge step in being able to build things without knowing or like doing a lot of code. You still need to know what you're doing, but this is a huge step forward. So if you thought you had excitement from Cursor last few weeks, get ready for Replit agent being talked about everywhere. And that's pretty much it in the big companies APIs. This week's buzz category, where I talk about everything weights and biases related. I mentioned we had a hackathon, September 21, 22. Come build with us your LLM as a judge. Definitely cool hackathon. I'm going to be there. We have cool judges, great prizes. If you're there in San Francisco, come give us a high five. We're going to feed you. You're going to hack. You're going to win some prizes. It's going to be awesome. And that's pretty much it. News. And as always, we are getting started with our favorite corner in the ThursdAI, which is open source. Open source AI, let's get it started. All right, let's get it started. And I think that we will just dive in. And I think we'll start with saying hi to our guest here. O1AI released eCoder, and we have Nuo here. Hey, Nuo, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Noah, would you like to say hi to the folks, introduce yourself, and also tell us about this cool release that you guys had?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm Nuo, and I'm developer relations at 01.ai. So I'm in charge of all of these open source models and also some of our proprietary models by API access. So yeah, today I'm going to share maybe some of the insights and maybe some of the topics that people really care about our open source model.
Just before we dive in, Noah, if you don't mind, two things, super quick, two things. One of them is when I reacted to your post and say, hey, we're going to talk about this on ThursdAI, you said something like, hey, I've been waiting for you to invite me. Are you following the show? Are you familiar with the show?
Yeah, I've been following the show, and maybe twice a week. Yeah, because Junyang has been a frequent guest on this show.
All right, yeah.
So I've been following many
great co-host of the show.
Yeah. News. Yeah, he is, yes. And I think he just had a very rough day because of all the GitHub stuff.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah, we should mention, folks who are listening, the Qwen team got flagged by GitHub, and for a while there, Qwen code was not on GitHub. It's not because they took it down. GitHub took it down for a sec, but it's back up now. So if I saw some like rumors circling or whatever, Qwen is back up. You're all good. But yeah, please go ahead, Noah. And the second thing I wanted to ask you super quick is that please tell us about O1. We've talked about O1AI before, but I don't know if the folks who are listening to the show regularly know about the company generally as who you guys are. Give us maybe a 1-2 sentence of O1AI.
Oh, yeah, sure. So basically the founder of our company is called Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, and he did his PhD back in the CMU. It was in the 80s or 70s. I can't really remember exactly, but he was one of the earliest guys who was responsible for developing the voice recognition system on very early versions of Apple computers. Anyway, long story short, so he has been doing many investment stuff, and all these investment has been really related to AI. And then we all know what happened last year, and he was like, "Oh, we can do that." And it's suddenly out of nowhere, and he was like, "Yeah, we can do that." So basically, he scrambled a team of very talented people, both here in China and also around the world. And we were able to secure many, let's say, GPUs, and voila, we got very lucky and shipped our first model called DF4B. Also, I believe that we are one of the earliest models, open source models, that really have a 200K context length. And that was actually, back then, although it was only less than a year ago, but back then it was something that is not so common, let me put it that way. So we also are seeing many amazing community fine-tunes, especially from Nose Research and all these Capybara series. And I was still on Reddit. I'm still seeing people saying that, hey, that's actually one of my favorite day-to-day model. And I was actually very surprised to see that.
Yeah, Yi 34B, I think this is the one that is most familiar to folks so far. As far as I'm remembering, and we talk about multiple models all the time, E34 is the main one. And with this history, tell us about eCoder, the new models that you guys are releasing.
Yeah, sure. So basically, the eCoder, to be honest with you, we didn't really treat this model extremely seriously. The reason is because this is more like a byproduct. So we are actually investigating all these different data pipelines to try to create really high quality corpora for coding and coding related tasks. And basically, where you're seeing the reason why we're releasing a 1.5B model this time is actually this is also one of our byproducts of training. So yeah, we were just thinking, why don't we just release that? Of course, the corpora was created to, let's say, was used to actually train towards a larger model, just like our E-large and also our MOE model that's actually during the training. But I think basically, I think it has two different goals. So the first goal is that for researchers, we are actually proving that. Also, kudos to DeepSeek, and I think they are releasing something tomorrow, right? I think so. Yeah, I think that what they're doing tonight here in China with their API is that they basically merged their very amazing DeepSeek Coder V2 into their DeepSeek model and got very amazing.
Oh yeah.
So anyway,
this is another thing that I need to add as well. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So basically, they published their paper on, I think, their newest paper on Coder model, which is in June this year. It was like 3 months ago, and is that they actually described their data cleaning pipeline. And the apparent different thing with their previous iteration is that they have this iterative data filtering process, and that small process actually did a magical thing to significantly increase the quality of the coding data. And as a result, we can see the huge difference between the previous version of our previous coder. Actually, it's not our previous internal coder models versus our code model this time. I'm seeing that there are people that is actually complaining, say, hey, when you guys are doing the evaluation, why are you comparing with the DeepSeek Coder 33B, which is a coding model that is almost the same age as our E34B, which is close to a year ago, is that we find it actually very interesting that you make these progress incremental, right? You are utilizing roughly the same kind of corpora for training, especially with all these code and all these math data. And the only difference is the quality, right? The quality gets higher. And when you increase the quality, you will be actually very surprised to find that our eCoder model is able to do, with only 9B parameters, is capable of achieving some very similar results with a 32B model, which is actually considered to be very amazing. And also, I have to say, it's a 9 billion model. It's a 9 billion parameter model anyway. So don't have like extremely high expectations on it, because if you have, let's say, a 70B model, it shouldn't really compare with a coder model that has 70B parameters. I'm actually looking towards Jinyang and hoping that Quinn can have a coder 2 model. I hope so. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Nuo, first of all, welcome to ThursdAI as a show. We're really happy to have you and representing O1 here. And as we said, E34 is something that many folks here are familiar with. Many folks probably either chatted with this model or fine-tuned or maybe merged and did a bunch of other stuff. And Nistan, do you have any follow-ups for Nuo to have maybe a question here? You also, I think, Nistan, you posted the GGUF version. Maybe you want to chat, or maybe you already added this on the top for folks as well.
Yeah, I just randomly grabbed it yesterday because Bartowski here had posted it, and I was looking for another model on his site. I'm like, oh, okay, this is out. But yeah, I want to say, E34 still lives on. Alpin, who's also the author of the Aphrodite engine, him and his team, they trained a model called the Magnum series of models, and I think that they got with Quinn, they got like 6th place on the leaderboard, and but the more downloaded one, I don't know how it's actually like the E34 fine tunes. So they're like modern E34 fine tunes. That model lives on. It's so easy to adapt it to other things.
Yeah, I think the reason is because 34B is such a sweet spot for those folks only have maybe a 4090 or maybe one or two on their hands. Because when you do these AWQ compressions or all these GGF compressions, and it actually fits exactly on 4090, so within a 24G, and it's actually smart enough. So parameter size actually does matter quite much. That's actually one of the things that we found. And if you go larger, then you probably need or maybe 3 or 4 4090, which doesn't. It's not like practical to fit in a PC case, and then you have to buy a server, and that's actually next level stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, so thank you for joining. Now I want to turn our attention to the second guest here on stage, Eugene, Pico creator. Eugene is the maintainer of RWKV. We've chatted with Eugene. Eugene, you've been on the show multiple times, I think, at this point. And this week, what I saw was a little screenshot that you posted from deep inside like a Windows distribution or something, where you said that, oh, this was like one of the biggest open source AI deployments in the world. You want to tell us a little bit about this and what was going on over there? I found it super cool, and I just wanted to highlight this.
Yeah, so I'm Eugene. I'm the chairman of the RWKV Open Source Foundation, and our group's goal is to make AI accessible to everyone regardless of language or country. So the main thing that's unique of our next generation foundation model architecture is that it is non-transformer based, it's sub-quadratic, meaning it's 100x to even 1000x cheaper in inference cost. And what the additional twist that we do is we train it on over 100 languages. We are aiming to expand this to 200 languages. It's also the first foundation model under the Linux Foundation. So we've been working on this for easily for the past few years already. And it's something that we are scaling slowly to replace transformers. And its main advantages is extremely low cost in terms of energy, in terms of GPU time, and in terms of language support. Its disadvantage is it's a new architecture. We don't have a 70B model. We don't have a 200B model. And that's where everyone else tends to focus on. But it was a complete surprise for us. Was it 3 days ago when basically some folks who were reverse engineering Windows local Copilot, which is one of their beta features, reached out to us and said, hey, did you know that Windows is using your? And we were like, what? and then as we dug deeper, we realized the Windows Copilot and potent local Copilot is being installed on every Windows 10 and Windows 11 computer. We went to check this. If you update your Windows 11, you can go to System Files and you can do a search for RWKV and you will find our DLLs in there, our libraries in there. And from what we found out with the team that was decompiling the Windows local Copilot, they are using two models actually. So the other one is the Windows Pi 3.5 and RWKV. They were using this for the Windows local recall and the Copilot. So they are using the Pi 3.5 to do the screenshots and the image recognition for the local recall. And they were using RWKV to process all the text output and understanding, and as part of the embedding search. And for those who are familiar with the agent space, you can imagine all the images go to embeddings, and then the embeddings as you search, RWKV is assisting with that. And as they search and they chat with it, what we believe they are using RWKV for, and this part is slightly less clear, is that we are being used to actually work together with the Pi 3.5, which they built, and our model is actually helping offload certain AI agents tasks, and in particular, translate things to languages that the Pi 3.5 does not support. Because
interesting.
Yeah. When you are deploying...
When I was in Microsoft Build, I was demoed some of these. So first of all, the recall feature and also the live translation feature. One of the things they showed there is AI plus PCs, or Copilot plus PCs that they show. And they have this thing called NPU, where they run some of these supposed AI tasks on this NPU chip, which is then the reason why some of these tasks are not affecting your battery. But you're saying also that they're now also running transformer alternatives, and this is potentially also saving battery for them, right? Because one of the benefits of RWKV is lower requirements and then thus lower resource usage and then lower battery. Am I understanding this correctly?
Exactly. We already have the benchmarks to prove that our model, especially from 3B to 7B, is literally one of the best multilingual models when you, especially beyond the first 10, 20 languages towards the 100 languages. And when you view it from an AI practitioner point, if you have a model that is able to handle the language, it's able to, and it's shown in the benchmark that it works, and it's way cheaper in energy cost, and battery is critical on a laptop. It makes sense why they're using us for that segment, respectively. Overnight, we had a 1.5 billion install, which was mind-blowing.
That's insane. Again, I will say this. Overnight, you have a 1.5 billion install base for a project that you're the chairman of that's licensed with Apache 2 under Linux Foundation, right? 1.5 billion installed. That's insane. That deserves this. Dude, congrats. Honestly, this is incredible. Eugene, I wanted to highlight this to the whole community because when something is in open source, folks like huge companies like Microsoft can just come and take this. I hope that they listen to this and they come back and maybe support the project as well, because if they're using this, maybe some support is warranted as well. So if somebody from Microsoft, higher ups from Microsoft are listening to ThursdAI, we know who's behind RWKV. Please come and talk to us why you chose RWKV if you were the decision makers for this. And also some support may be needed. Pick a creator and other folks support their work. It's incredible. Eugene, give us maybe one or two sentences. We need to move on soon, but please give us one or two sentences on Finch.
Yeah, so Finch is the latest version of the RWKV model. We scaled the previous 7B to now 14B models, and it's a jump up from our previous foundation model when it comes to multilingual performance and long context performance, which Microsoft, you haven't updated your RWKV.cpp to the latest. You may want to update to this new model and the new library.
Also, please, to Microsoft, make sure the GitHub for this one stays up, right? There's 1.5 billion machines now running it. Thanks.
And also, we accept donations in GPU or cash to the Linux Foundation. Thank you.
Yeah, please, donations in GPU.
No, this is insane. It's going to be like 1.5 million chimes or whatever the heck sound Windows makes these days. It's turning on, and the simulated neural tissue is not in there. And that's pretty dope.
So I'm really hoping that this effort continues and we actually get to the bottom of what they're using this for. You're saying translation and the recall feature, which, by the way, I think this week, to just give an update, I think this week something came out about you used to be able to disable this, and now they said that this is a mistake, that you're not going to be able to disable this. Something like this. I need to go find it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why we are fully installed everywhere. As to disabling our foundation model, please take that up with Microsoft. That's not my problem.
Yeah, that's not you don't go to the open source developers about Microsoft features. Awesome. Folks, give Pico Creator a follow. Eugene, thank you for joining us. Always fun to listen. And then we need to move on because we have Niklas here and from Allen AI, and would love to chat about what you guys launched as well. And let me just set the stage before Niklas, you introduce yourself to the audience. We've chatted with Allen Institute for AI before when you guys launched OLMoE, and that was a great chat with Nathan about OLMoE, about how Allen Institute does open source fully and focuses on everything open source. In the context of what we talk about in the open source community, code could be open source, model can be open source or open weights. Often what Meta does is open weights, for example, they don't tell us how they train the model. They definitely don't give us their data set, for example, or different checkpoints. We often get the one checkpoint. So we talked about what open source and open weights means. And Allen Institute for AI does an incredible service for the community by open sourcing everything. And with that, this week, Allen Institute of AI released another huge contribution for the open source community. And the guy who led this effort, Niklas, is here with us. Niklas, please welcome to the show. Please tell folks, please feel free to introduce yourself. And then let's chat about a little bit of what you guys released in this effort.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I've been working with the Allen Institute of AI and contextual AI on this OLMoE model. And as you said, the motivation is that most open models, they're not fully open. They only share their weights, especially for MOEs. There was no good MOE that was fully open, including data at this point. And so that's why we set out to do this. And also many of the closed labs they're using MOEs apparently. So GPT-4 is reportedly an MOE and Gemini 1.5. So part of the motivation is also that with MOEs, we can possibly reduce the cost of using these models. And so we trained OLMoE. Just a quick summary of the model. It has 1 billion active, 7 billion total parameters, and we trained it for 5 trillion tokens. And after training, we find that among models that use a similar amount of parameters, so roughly 1 billion active, it has the best performance and even exceeds some larger models. For example, on our MMLU plot, we find that it's better than Gemma 2, 2.6 billion, even though that one is 2 times more active parameters. And yeah, everything's open, as you said, so model data, code, logs, and we've also done a lot of analysis and other experiments with the MOE architecture. So I'm happy to dive more into some of those experiments or some of the analysis we did, or we can also just take questions, whichever way you prefer.
Yeah, so let's talk about just one by one the type of stuff that you open sourced, and let's talk about what does open sourcing means versus open weights. Folks know this, they listen to ThursdAI, so we are a technical show. Open weights, what we get is a whatever safe tensors files or GGF file, whatever. We just get the file that we can run, and it spits out tokens, the next token prediction, whatever. You guys released way more than this. Could you walk us through the type of stuff that we just got this week from you guys?
Yeah, great point. But with the model, we have the data, so the pre-training data that the model was trained on, and that's probably the most important next artifact. Of course, having the model weights, you can argue that's the most important one, but then the data is really critical because it is essentially what created this model. Like, it's very important to understand how it works, and a lot of research uses the data to understand model behavior and things like that. So I think that's very useful. And unfortunately for tech corporations, it's very difficult to do that because often they will get, it's maybe not even their fault, but they will get sued and run into many problems if they release their data. But so we just released all the data that we trained on so people can use that. And then the next thing after the data that's really important, I think, is the code, so that others, essentially anyone, if they have the necessary compute, can reproduce our model and train their own model if they'd like to. And so all the code, both for the pre-training and also the various fine-tuning that we do of the model, so instruction tuning, preference tuning, is open source. And then the kind of cherry on the cake is the logs, where if you also release the exact logs of the metrics during training and everything, it might help people to understand what's happening. And if they try to reproduce the model, they can compare sort of, is their own loss matching what we got during training? They can see our exact command that we ran and all those details. And so we also opened our weights and biases so people can just roam around there and exactly copy our command.
Sorry, when a guest mentions weights and biases on the show, they obviously get applause. This is very clear. Not many times guests come on the show and just bite their own, say that we release weights and biases logs. But yeah, folks, Alan Insta for AI, great friends, use weights and biases a lot. Niklas, I saw the 1B logs that you posted. Incredible usage of reports. The feature that we have that allows you to choose like put your plots in a report, which is basically like a medium that you can like basically write Markdown, whatever, and put your actual plots, live plots, and send them to your friends. Niklas, you used it great and put it in the actual paper. So thank you for that. That was great. And I saw this. But yeah, for many other folks, they can compare their runs to your runs based on whatever the fact that you released many, like your reports, which is incredible. Talk to me about the code. You guys built your own training code as well. You didn't use one of the open source libraries. You didn't use Axolotl, for example, or Hugging Face, etc. You built your own training thing.
Yeah.
Could you talk to me about this? And
yeah, sure. So those libraries are great, and they've been a big inspiration. But we have a pre-training code base at OpenAI called OLMoE that has already been open source for the dense models, and we essentially integrated MOEs into that, building on code that has also been written by many other great people like Megablocks, for example, which is a library from Databricks. But yeah, we integrated that into OLMoE, and that's open source on GitHub with, I think, an Apache license. And then for the fine-tuning, yeah, we did not use Axolotl, but we used OpenInstruct, which is a code base that was used for the Tulu series of models. And we made some small changes to it to support MOEs better. And yeah, I think those are the fine-tuning scripts. But yeah.
And Tulu 3 post-training, could you talk about this? This is this is a preview of our version 3 of Tulu post-training pipeline. Could you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. As some of you may know, AI2 has been working on this Tulu series of instruction tune models, which are pretty essentially like exploring the recipe of instructional preference tuning and pushing it to maximum performance. And right now, the next model in that series is Tulu 3, and we already had a preview of the data set, so we used that for training OLMoE, and probably there's going to be a full Tulu 3 release maybe later this year or something.
That's incredible. All right, 244 checkpoints every 5,000 steps.
Yeah.
Talk to me. Who needs this? Why are you releasing so much? What's the benefit? Tell me, like, why does this so much is needed? Explain to folks who don't understand why this is so important.
Yeah, I think that checkpoints are interesting because there's a lot of, it's mostly to enable other research where some people might be interested in exploring training dynamics. Like what happens exactly after, say, 5,000, 10,000 steps? What's changing in the model? We also log a lot of those to weights and biases. But if people can directly look at the checkpoint and play with it, they might be able to do some analysis that's otherwise not possible. And also it allows people to take a checkpoint and continue training from there. Maybe some people don't want to use the final model, but they want to use an earlier model and maybe continue training from there. I think another thing that's very interesting is some people like to study memorization of these kinds of things in the model, and figuring out when does that occur during training, at which point in time is very interesting. We also make use of the checkpoints for some of our own analysis in the paper. There's a section on MOE analysis where we analyze how the router weights change. So the router determines which expert processes certain input. And we find that it saturates very early. Like the weights of the router at some point, very early in training, they don't really change anymore. And that's pretty interesting because it might hint at some cool research to do to make the router learn more later in training. Essentially, it gets useless after a small bit of the training has passed. So I'm hoping that there's more research that people will do on top of these intermediate checkpoints.
It's very interesting because I do remember a year ago, after Mistral 7B came out, I think Mixtral kickstarted this MOE excitement. I think it came out that GPT-4 was an MOE. George Hotz, I think in Latent Space, leaked it or something, and then people started getting excited. And then Mixtral came out with MOE. We got all excited about this, like the first open source MOE that we got, or one of the first MOEs. We got all excited about learning about MOEs, I remember. And then there was like a bit of excitement, and then it died down. We got back to getting dense models, and we saw huge dense models from Meta. Llama 3.1 was like a huge, like 4 or 5 dense chunker that like performs incredibly well. And for a second there, it felt like MOE is going to be the next big thing. But the research continued. Like stuff continued getting released. Mistral kept releasing a few stuff in MOE, but I think the next Mistral 2, I think that one was, I believe, also a dense model, if I'm not mistaken. And so it did feel like there was like a big, huge promise from MOEs, and then like the excitement died down a little bit. What's your take? Because you guys kept training MOEs. Recently also we got the Jamba model from the Israel company also was in MOE. What's your take on now that you have trained this? And also I saw that you have some very interesting insights as well in your thread. So I want to talk about those next. So after training in MOE, what's your take after moving OLMoE to OLMoE?
Yeah, great point. And I think Jamba was from AI21, which you just mentioned.
Yes, AI21. I get confused with AI2 and AI21.
Yeah, and I think another interesting data point is DeepSeek, where essentially they switched entirely to MOEs, I think. So their DeepSeek V2 series was completely MOEs. I think that the advantages are so it depends on what you're interested in. But if you're interested in maximizing efficiency, then the advantages are very obvious, because if you optimize the model right, then you only use a subset of the parameters, so it runs much faster than an equivalent dense model with the same total parameters. From that point of view, it makes a lot of sense. We also have a plot in the paper where we compare the training flops you need to train an MOE in an equivalent dense model, and it trains faster because of the sparsity. So the advantages are very clear. The reason I think why people are maybe going back and forth between MOEs and dense is that training MOEs, the engineering is a lot more difficult, because you may have more problems with instabilities. Like the top K operation in the MOE is not super easy. So what happens is, after the routing, you select a top K number of experts that the tokens get routed to. And this is not really differentiable and might introduce some problems. You might run into lots of loss spikes, especially as you go really big. So maybe that's the problems they might have been running into at Mistral. I'm not sure. But I think if you can figure those out, then it's great. And it seems like the big organizations, at least, they're sticking with MOEs. So they probably have a lot more engineering talent. So like Gemini 1.5, I think they officially said that it's an MOE. And that's probably because they're able to figure out those loss spikes even at massive scales. So I hope that we can figure it out in the open soon, and then also scale further to those much bigger and better MOEs.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that a lot of the very open source work, and as I think you guys said, 100% open source MOE that you guys released, the first good 100% open source MOE, I think this is the tagline that I saw from Nathan. Let's talk about some of the learnings. Nistan, we'll get to your question next. I want to, you had a thread and you got to some of the learnings, specifically about the experts themselves. And I remember some of the learnings from Mixtral. It was a while ago, but I remember that it was hard to figure out the expertization of different experts. It was like all over the place which experts were really experts in any fields or anything. And I think you started saying that you saw a little bit of a different picture. Could you talk through what you actually saw and some of the interesting insights that potentially you got from looking at the data and the training process?
Yeah,
here?
of course. So one hypothesis with makeshift experts is that because you only activate a subset of parameters, maybe these subsets, they specialize on certain things. So we look at two kinds of we define and analyze two kinds of specialization. One is domains, so looking at GitHub, Archive, Wikipedia, books, MC4, and another one is looking at token IDs. So are there experts that specialize on very specific token IDs from the vocabulary? For domain specialization, we do see a pattern where like some experts, they're really active, for example, for GitHub or Archive, and then the same experts are not really used at all when it comes to book data. So it seems like these experts have a lot of, are like specialized on those domains, GitHub, Archive, and then not really used for some other domains. And the interesting thing here, I think that you hinted to, is with Mixtral, we didn't really see that. So we plotted both of them next to each other. And for Mixtral, the activation is very similar across all domains. So there's like a random baseline, essentially, where if you assume that every domain is equally sent to all of the experts, then there's no specialization, whereas if it's very far from what would be this equal baseline, then we assume that there might be some specialization. And for Mixtral, it's always very close to this random baseline. And our running hypothesis is that this is because Mixtral was probably upcycled from Mistral. I think they didn't officially confirm it, but some people have proposed this. And the reason why this might make sense is that if you upcycle this model, so you take the dense Mistral model and then turn it into an MOE, you're copying the MLP, like the feed-forward network, multiple times, once for each expert. And that might limit the amount of further specialization you can do because they all start from the same point, which is probably already in a fairly optimal parameter range because Mistral has already been trained for a long time. So then maybe they can't really specialize a lot more. Whereas for us, we're training from scratch. Plus, we have a lot of experts, so they can all specialize on different things.
A lot of experts. Could you talk about the numbers? Sorry, I think I missed this. You have more than...
Yeah, we have...
Yeah, talk to me. I think I actually didn't see the number.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We have 64 experts in each layer, and 8 of them are activated. Whereas for Mixtral, they did 8 experts in each layer with 2 that are activated. And this idea of having many experts, which are pretty small, I think comes from DeepSeek. From the DeepSeek paper, they proposed having like fine-grained experts. And then some others have adopted it, like Quen and other models. They also use many small experts.
Yeah. Go ahead, Janine.
Yeah, just a quick question. Yeah, about training from scratch. Do you think training from scratch has greater potential than upcycling? Because we have tried something like adding some random noise to make the experts, the initialization of each expert different. Do you think training from scratch really have greater potential? Yep.
Yeah, great point. So actually, we were also inspired a lot by your MOE models. And we tried the noise upcycling as well. So we have an experiment on that in the appendix where we added, similar to I think what you did for Quen 2, we added 50% of Gaussian noise to the dense model before upcycling and then trained from there. But we didn't find that it is much better than training from scratch. So essentially, it depends a lot on the compute budget, right? If you only have a little bit more compute than what you trained the dense model for, then you should probably do upcycling. Whereas if you have the same amount of compute as you trained the dense model for, reserved for your MOE, or even more, then you should probably train from scratch because it will allow more specialization in the experts and you can pretty quickly catch up with the upcycled model. So that's also what we find. And I think especially, so this is also just an hypothesis, but I think especially if you're upcycling a very overtrained model. So we tried in the paper upcycling OLMoE 1B, which was already trained for 2 trillion tokens. And upcycling that model didn't work super well because probably it has already been trained for such a long time Like the parameters is already in a very optimal range.
Yeah, I do agree with this. Yeah. Maybe training from scratch had greater potential, but at that time we did not have enough GPUs to train such large models. Yeah, we would just use upcycling because it's more efficient. But I think training from scratch may have greater potential.
Yeah, makes sense. So are you gonna maybe train from scratch some of your next MOEs? Are you continuing with MOEs in Qwen 3 or beyond?
Yeah, we are doing training from scratch right now recently. Yeah, but it is not open source yet. Yeah.
Okay, very exciting.
Yeah, a follow-up
Nicholas,
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Junying, and then I'll have another one.
Maybe a very quick one. Yeah, do you have any experience in fine-tuning MOE models? Because years ago, I've talked to Ian and Barrett about fine-tuning MOE models, and recently we have met similar problems. And yeah, fine-tuning MOE models is a bit more difficult than fine-tuning dense models. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't run into any problems with it. We did run some experiments where we tested with activating the load balancing loss or not activating it, and also which checkpoint we fine-tune from. And we found that not activating it is fine. So the load balancing loss, for context, is this loss that we employ during pre-training to enforce the experts to roughly process tokens equally. So tokens get sent to all experts equally, because otherwise there might be some experts processing all of it. And then it leads to a lot of imbalance in the model and hurts training. So we don't use this load balancing loss during fine-tuning because the model is already super load balanced after pre-training, and we find it doesn't really matter. And other than that, it went really well. There were no issues during fine-tuning, I think.
Yeah, that is super cool. Yeah, back to you, Alex.
Awesome. That 100% open source. Nicholas, you mentioned in the beginning, and maybe this is the last question before we move on. You mentioned in the beginning, big companies, usually not always also big companies. When we have folks here, they talk about their open weights models. I often ask the question, hey, what do you put in your data? What's the mix? And often people can't tell me. Even friends of the pod who are here on stage sometimes can't tell me, because sometimes that's the proprietary kind of secret sauce of their models, which is fine. Like I understand this is fine. You guys released the data that you collected, the data set. How are you guys able to do this? Why? What went into your data set? What was the mix of data? Where did you collect this? How are you able to also release your model with the fact that you're not going to get sued after you release your data? Could you talk about the collection process and the release process and the licensing and everything?
Yeah, a great point. So our data heavily builds on prior work. So we use the DCLM data set from Datacomp LM that was released earlier this year. It's a snapshot. It's like a filtered comment crawl data set of 3.8 trillion tokens. So we use that one, plus we add some data sets from Dolma, which was a data set LNAI previously released. Specifically, we take Wikipedia from that, the star coder subset it had for some code data, and Pesto and some other small parts, and just mix it all together for a data set of roughly 4 trillion tokens. And then we take that and also repeat a bit, do a bit more than one epoch, which has been shown to be beneficial. I think, I'm not sure whether or not we'll get sued, but I think it's probably fine. Like these data sets are already public, so it's not like we're scraping anew. And I think, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. So first of all, as I said, like a lot of bigger companies, they are not talking about the data. The second question I always have about the data is how much of it is taken from, let's say, humans pre-2020 internet, and how much of this is synthetic. Did you do any synthetic generation?
Good point. I think for our instruction tuning data, so the fine-tuning data we use, there's probably a lot of synthetic data in there, because that one uses the Tulu mix. It has lots of, I think, some of those probably generated data like shared GPT and stuff. I'd have to take a look what's exactly in there. But for the pre-training data, I think it's largely human generated because it's Wikipedia, it's comment crawl, but we didn't do any more specific analysis.
Awesome. All right, Nicholas, anything else that is interesting that I missed and didn't cover and you want to share with the folks, feel free. And also how to continue engaging with LNAI, anything else that you want maybe from the community to know, this is your stage. Go ahead.
No, this is great. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think we'd be most curious to hear what people would like next. Are people happy with this model size and would like a longer model, but with the same size? So we're thinking, should we do 15 trillion tokens? And then maybe, so the performance wouldn't improve a lot because it's a lot of tokens for such a small model, but maybe people want that because it's very small and easy to use. Or are people more interested in a larger model, but trained for maybe a similar amount or even less tokens, which would then have better performance, but of course it would be a bit more expensive to use. So if people have thoughts on that, feel free to share in the comments or talk. We'd love to hear it. Yeah. Or just message me, whatever.
Awesome. Yeah, so folks, give Niklas a follow, and the thread that Niklas has pinned has ton of the collaborators on the paper and the work. Niklas, from the perspective of ThursdAI, where we cover open source, first of all, for the first hour, we dedicate the full hour to open source releases because I think many other folks build on top of open source. All of the other news could not have been possible without the incredible work that folks put up in open source. And this is why we dedicate the first full hour in open source. Efforts like the one that you put out are very important. And when everything is open source, including weights and biases logs, which is incredible, but everything is open source, including code for training, including data, it's very important for me specifically, but for all of us to highlight. And huge kudos for this release, for this work. And really, the applause are well deserved. Thank you for coming up and chatting with us and giving us a very deep, informative outline and a deep dive into this release and this MOE. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see continued build on MOE models going forward as well. And now we have to move on because I think it's been an hour and we have to move on to chat about a few other things before we go to big companies and PIs. But thank you for sticking with us. Feel free to stick around and chime in for other things that we have going on. Yeah, let's take a little musical break, and then we're gonna move on to the second part, which is big companies LLMs. Hey, this is Alex from the post-production studio recording. We did not, in fact, end up having the breaking news that I wanted during the show. It happened maybe an hour later. Friend of the pod, Matt Schumer, another friend of the pod, Sahil, from Glaive AI, both deployed and dropped what seems to be the top open source and potentially one of the best LLMs in the world right now, called Reflection 70B. This is a fine-tune of Llama 70B, Llama 3.1 70B, and this fine-tune is a special one. They have baked it on a specific dataset that builds in a reflection ability into the model. Reflection is this basically prompting technique where you ask the model after it tells you an answer to reflect on its answer and give you a better answer. This is a continuation of a chain of thought prompting technique. Chain of thought is when you ask a model, hey, think step by step. So they have baked a chain of thought and reflection into this model, into the thought process. So when the model actually outputs some tokens, the model first thinks, then plans, then thinks again, then reflects on its answer, and then gives you another answer. And this 70 billion parameter model from basically a fine-tune of Llama 70B Instruct now gets incredible results. They released it and people are still, it happened like an hour ago. Matt is still trying to add GPUs to the demo chat that they released because it's still not hosted anywhere. Hopefully it's going to be hosted by the time you hear this. This model beats GPT-4. Oh, it beats Opus. It beats Gemini 1.5. It beats Llama 405B on GPQA. It gets very close to Claude 3.5 Sonnet on GPQA. It beats all of these models on MMLU. So it gets 89.9 on MMLU. So bigger than Claude 3.5 Sonnet. If this is the top model, this is probably the top score on MMLU. It gets very close to Sonnet on human eval. It gets 91% on human eval. Claude Sonnet is at 92, but Opus is 84. GPT-4o is at 90%. So this gets 91. The interesting stat here is if eval is, which is instruction following, this model gets 90. But the very interesting stat is GSM 8K, so grade school math 8K. This dataset needs to be, this evaluation benchmark needs to be retired because this model gets a 99.2% on this GSM 8K dataset, which is crazy. There's also the evaluation benchmark. Very exciting news from our friends at Glaive AI. Glaive is a service that allows basically anyone to tell them, hey, we need a synthetic dataset for this and this purpose, and they will generate the synthetic dataset and will fine-tune a model for you. So definitely check out Glaive. Matt Schumer is the CEO of Hyperwrite AI and a frequent guest of the pod and They are working on the 405 billion parameter fine-tune of this model, and they're looking for sponsors as well. This is the news that I wanted to, I couldn't wait to share, because they did tell me about this model a little bit before. I will hopefully talk to them next week and check out the newsletter for the links of how you can check out this model. So back to the show. We have a lot to cover. All right, folks, you are on ThursdAI. It's been almost an hour and a half of open source news. We've covered so far the OLMoE, first good open source MoE from Elon AI. We've covered the RWKV deployed to 1.5 billion devices. We've covered, we barely mentioned, but MMU Pro, which is a new update to the MMU evaluation benchmark. We've covered 01 AI eCoder, and we may still yet get breaking news at the end of the show with the open source area, so stick around with us. In the big companies and LLM and APIs, we talked in the beginning of the show about SSI Inc. raising a 1 billion round from everyone, so we'll skip this a little bit. We just mentioned this, that Ilya Sutskever is raising incredible, huge money. I want to talk about Claude Enterprise a little bit. Claude Enterprise was announced, I think yesterday, by Anthropic, out of the blue. It's, hey, we are also, by the way, we're offering enterprises a dedicated model, dedicated offering. And the thing that I got the most out of this is new capabilities. Because so far, I think Google was leading the pack with the context window game. According to everyone, Google has the GPU, the compute to allow something like 2 million context windows. And now apparently Claude can go up to 500,000 context window in length, in addition to some other features. And so I just wanted to hear from folks on stage here, what do we take from this enterprise offering and the fact that Anthropic is just sitting casually on 500K context window, where OpenAI, I think, is still in the realm of 128, I think, is the height of what we get from OpenAI. And we haven't seen from OpenAI that much stuff lately as well. We're still waiting. Nistan, go ahead, and then Wolfram.
Yeah, so I was even talking with the client for this. They wanted to know if their biomedical company research and stuff could all be kept in context, because they tried the RAG systems and they just weren't doing it, and they just wanted to have a whole bunch of papers in context. There's a huge demand for having stuff in context only. And yeah, you can pull off all the tricks with the RAG, but at the end of the day, cosine similarity search just sucks. And that's a lot of shared opinion on that. It's an opinion. And the way to use the models will be to have better long context. And we know from past work that you can extend the context of models and you can train it for longer ones. And yeah, we have from Yi right here, the models that did 200K. The thing that's missing at the moment is benchmarks for longer context, but it is very likely that Anthropic is doing a much better job in here. And I'll quickly add why it's a big deal is because often, depending on what the model's hidden size is, that's how you used to calculate it, it can be about a megabyte or half a megabyte, something like that, for every token of context. So if you need 1,000 words, so one book page, you're going to need 1 gig. And if you need 100,000 words, you're going to need 100 gigs. And that's GPU VRAM. So to be able to provide this, they have to pull off some tricks and then to be able to serve it on 8 80 gig cards. So it's expensive to serve a large amount of context. So it will be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, you mentioned we need new benchmarks. When we talked with AI21 about Jamba, they specifically mentioned effective context length, where they talked about they also had 200,000 tokens in the context window for Jamba. And then they mentioned effective context length with a synthetic benchmark called Ruler from NVIDIA, which was fairly new when they released it, which measures kind of needle in a haystack approach, which we know is not enough. And they took a needle in a haystack and expanded it to a set of, I think, 7 or 8 tasks: retrieval, multi-hop tracing, aggregation, variable, and a bunch of others. And so that's going to be very interesting. Who's going to have the compute to go and test the 500K tokens on Anthropic's new enterprise offering. The additional thing they offered is GitHub integration, by the way, and a bunch of other enterprise stuff like SIM, user provisioning, access controls. I know for a fact I work at like startups basically, but I know that enterprises and their provisioning and legal departments, they require user provisioning and deprovisioning before they even think about signing a contract with companies. Before they even, if you're sitting in the department somewhere, hey, I want access to my department for 5 Claude licenses, you go to the provisioning department, they're like, do they have this and this? No, you can't use this company. This is like a move from Anthropic to go into this world, definitely. Wolfram, what's your take on this?
Yeah, you already covered the part I wanted to say, the first part, which is the ruler benchmark and effective context length. So we have to see how much you can use with that. But whenever the maximum context length is increasing, so usually we get more effective context as well, which is a good thing, I think, and especially relevant for coding, because I think the Cursor and Sonnet integration is pretty popular right now. So the more context, the bigger the code base can get, and that will unlock a whole lot of other use cases now. So you can develop more complex applications that way and stuff. So that is very important. The context is really important for many use cases. And it's good that they are increasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, to your point where semantic search is not that necessarily great, I think chunking is one thing that people are struggling with RAG specifically, how to chunk. Taking a huge medical document, how do you break it down so that your RAG system can pull the relevant chunks and then compare between them? That's one thing that people are struggling with. And then if you shove all of it into the context, that's easier then as well. Neo, I have a question for you specifically, because we're talking about needle in haystack. I saw something maybe that we didn't talk about, needle in the code task that you created. I saw this briefly, but I wanted to ask you and I didn't have a chance to. You created some, I saw this on your blog report. Could you briefly mention this as we were talking the needle in the haystack and needle in the code? Could you briefly mention what you guys did there?
Yeah, sure. So for the code, so basically we insert, it's actually a very similar concept. And also I think CodeQuinn has also done something very similar, that you just insert a very customized, highly customized function, and you try to do that retrieval. And one very interesting thing I want to mention is that for the needle in a haystack, you want to be very careful about what kind of needle you want to insert. Because if the little, so basically you try to want to insert a very short sentence about maybe a very special knowledge sometimes. And if that knowledge is a very common knowledge at the LLMs itself can answer by itself, so that retrieval result can be sometimes not very accurate. And that's maybe, I believe that's one of the mistakes where we made, I think was last year, very early. Yeah. And we later corrected that. Yeah.
I see. Awesome. Thank you. And so the next thing that I briefly mentioned, thank you, Noah. The next thing that I think is also very cool is their native GitHub integration for this enterprise offering, because many companies, what they do with Claude is code, and what they code it with is either like via the cursor integration, but this being like a direct integration, people just copy paste code, or they use the cool artifacts feature, which we covered last week, that's now available to all users. Direct integration with GitHub can let Claude, with this huge context length, just scan almost full repos of your code, or not huge enterprise repos, definitely, but like big chunks, and import from them. I think a GitHub integration is super cool. The thing that I noticed I wanted to bring to your attention is they have a bunch of enterprise customers already. They've been working behind the scenes. So this is not new. This is new to us and a new announcement, but this is not new. They've been already running with this. The customers that they highlight is Midjourney and some others and GitLab. But the integration that they have is GitHub. They don't have a GitLab integration. They have a GitHub integration. But the customers that they highlight there is GitLab. Just a funny thing. Speaking of Anthropic, two other things that are highlighting on from the world of Anthropic this week. Amazon decided that the Titan models that they've trained, that they have, are not good enough for Alexa, and that they are going to use Claude from Anthropic as the brains for the next, or I guess the supercharged, the AI supercharged version of Alexa, which they call Remarkable, quote, Remarkable, unquote. And they will probably launch this somewhere in October. This will likely require a paid subscription between $5 and $10. This is why I asked in the beginning of the show, will you Will you start paying $5 or $10 monthly charge for your Alexa to be like super, super smart? And I actually don't know if I would or not. But I think that's very interesting that they've tried and decided to not use their own model. It's Amazon, folks. They have AWS. Like many people train their models on Amazon and they have MLEs. How come they didn't get to the point where they're like, they have a model good enough to run on their own model, like their own devices? What the hell is going on? Neo, what's your take on this?
Yeah, and also I was like, if you're going to use Alexa, you use some models, and it's not going to be extremely complicated unless you're trying to use Alexa just like what Apple did to try to drive different agentic actions to maybe place an order of something. That's even place an order, it's not that complicated task. So I wouldn't really think if you just use maybe like Llama 7B, then that should work. That's for one. And for second, I'm not sure if it's just me or everybody's doing this. So my only usage of using Alexa was to set up a timer when I was cooking. My hands was fully occupied. So probably no.
I think Wolfram will join me on this. I use Alexa for my smart home, and Alexa operates my home, and I do use it quite a lot. Now let's talk about, and Wolfram, please join me on this. Let's talk about some numbers before we. Wolfram, yeah, go ahead. Let's talk about like Alexa devices as devices deployed.
Yeah,
I think there's 500 million devices deployed.
So
and people use them.
The Alexa integration is. I wouldn't do it because I'm running Home Assistant and have my own setups, but I would give it to my mother, for example, who's using Alexa, and yeah, it's just little things that you can use with it. And I've always been saying we need a real AI that can do something for you, that has integration with your apps, so you can ask it to send a mail to somebody.
Yep. Oh, I think I lost Wolfram.
No, we can hear.
So this is the first for me. I lost the mid-sentence, but you guys can hear him. I'm sorry.
No, I think we lost Alex. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I
think it was me.
He's back. Okay.
Wow, this is the first for me. I'm sorry, folks. From this, my connection does not love you. Sorry for interrupting. Hopefully what you said was very important. Could you repeat for me, please? What was the last thing you said? Mother, you would give this to your mother, and then it needs to do important things.
It was fitting. It wasn't actually interrupting me because I was done when you started talking. But yeah, okay. It needs to be more useful, the assistant. It's not just turn on the light and do stuff like that, but really send a mail, make an appointment, more stuff like that. Check what is in the refrigerator and buy some stuff that is running out. Something like that.
So very interestingly, because this is kind of Amazon's play into the hardware space, Google will have their own Gemini stuff, Gemini on device. Apple is going there with in your pocket. Alexa has 500 million, or at least Amazon says they sold 500 million Alexa-enabled devices. And some folks estimate they have 100 million active Alexa users. And maybe 10% of those would pay for something like this. I don't know about these numbers because I have 7 of these devices in my own home. I'm probably a power user.
So sorry for interrupting. So does anyone actually remember that maybe like a couple of years ago, like 2 years ago, Amazon had this little drone inside your house, and they say that the drone can actually patrol around the house. And I'm just saying, if it's a multi-modal one, it's actually understand what every people is doing. And it's weird, but if so, then multimodality, yeah, probably $5, $10. I'll pay for that.
Given the fact that they gave up on their own model and now they're subcontracting Anthropic, I would not trust them running a multimodal drone in my house. Nissan,
they own a substantial part of Anthropic, by the way. I think they invested like 400 million or something.
$4 billion.
4 billion. Okay, so one order of magnitude. Yeah, so they own a part of the company. I'm surprised this stuff is taking so long to integrate. And I don't know, I think it's been great for open source community, and we have an open interpreter and all these devices coming up. So all I would say for corporate is just make sure none of the executives know what Hugging Face is. Just hire as many security and diagrams people as possible. Make the most complicated RAG setup to sell to your consultants for the next 12 months. And because it's been great for for everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. Staying a little bit in Anthropic land, just super quick last thing that folks should probably know. There's a little bit of mounting of evidence that Claude invisibly adds some instructions. Some folks say that even this happens even via the API layer. Riley Goodside, who's working for Scale AI, he's like a very known figure in prompting land. He says that there's an example. He says, recite the Batman theme song, and like Claude answers, I apologize, I cannot recite or reproduce lyrics to the Batman theme song. And basically he basically shows that Anthropic injects to Claude as though the user says something that says, hey, this is, how should I say, the model, the user wrote the model to avoid copyright works. This is ridiculous. Wolfram, I think you saw this on Local Llama. There's some people who said that this also happens in an API as well.
Yeah,
right?
I can confirm it. I did the test. I did it on 2 different API keys, and one had the injections. That was my personal key. So where I was using my Amy assistant, and it probably triggered a bit.
Wow.
So yeah, it's always there when it only happens when I guess there's a content filter. So they check your prompt that you are sending, your input prompt. And if it triggers, it attaches or inserts a part at the end. And you can get it with some prompting techniques to get the system prompt. So you see it's there. And it was always there on my personal account, but not on the company account. And it was reproducible. So yeah, it is attached to your key. So you get flagged, and then you have some kind of sensor monitor watching what you are sending. And if it triggers, it injects, which can, of course, ruin your prompt, of course. And it's not working because I can still get anything I want through prompting, but it isn't being injected, and who knows how that affects stuff. It's a bad thing.
Nope.
We cheered them when they were publishing their system prompts for the transparency, and now they are doing stuff like that. It's a bad idea. It doesn't work, and I hope they will reconsider.
Uncool. 100% uncool. We also have another confirmation from Ryan Boyle in comments as well, that he confirmed that this also happened on Claude on Vertex via Google. Completely uncool. Thoughts from other folks on this? What's when something's like happening in the API, I'm assuming that I should be able to do stuff that I need for my things. I should be able to turn off the safety filters, hopefully not like too crazy amount. What? Anthropic, uncool. Nistan, what's it?
I still do want to reserve some judgment with MOE models, they can do this on their own. We don't know what other tricks they're using. We know it's common to have a second model. And I'm just saying this could also, there is still a chance, probably not, but it could also still be just speculation on our part. Like we could still be wrong. It could just be the model itself is like that. So that's that possibility. As far as the evidence goes, I also had difficulty with generating like the synthetic medical conversations, and I was firing them off through OpenRouter. I was using the 2 different Anthropic APIs, and it was rejecting them at random, even though it was a list of 2,200 diseases, and it was the exact same prompt for each being swapped in. This engine would just reject maybe a couple hundred of them or close to half of them, and there wasn't like any pattern to the rejection, so that was also weird, which leads us to believe that Wolfram's probably right.
If folks from Anthropic are listening to this, we're uncool.
Yeah, just give us a
folks,
stable freaking API, man.
Yeah,
everyone's trying to sell these services, and like, how are you going to offer an SLA? Do you even know what that is? Like, you buy internet as a business, often it comes with a service level agreement. Who can offer a service level agreement on top of AI tools if no one can keep a freaking stable API up? Just keep a freaking stable API up, please. No one's doing this.
Especially as we just talked about Claude Enterprise, where I'm assuming that this wouldn't happen, because if this happens in Enterprise, then this could nullify whatever agreement they have. Pick a creator, go ahead, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I've been shouting out loud that closed source providers need to start doing version control, because we run an inference platform, ThursdAI, and half of our enterprise customers, they convert to open source models because the closed model just randomly broke their entire production system, and they were panicking for 1-2 days to just find an alternative to just fix everything. They don't want to rewrite all their prompts, and they don't care about the MML you score when that happens. Yeah, it's a benefit for open source AI because we don't break our models every 2 weeks. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. When it's an open source model, it's your model, you host it. The weights are the weights. There will be the same weights in a decade from now if you stop updating. That's 100% true. That's 100% a shout out for open source. All right, folks, we're moving forward with the big companies LLMs. Cohere updates their Command R and Command R Plus on their API. They didn't release them in open weights yet. Cohere,
No, they did.
like, what's up?
They did. They're up.
What?
They're up on Hugging
Really?
Face. Yeah, the OH
What?
models.
So my bad. I should have mentioned them in the previous section then. So I apologize. I take it back. I should have mentioned this in the previous one. Listen, thank you. They did release. I didn't know this. I didn't do my job correctly. Okay. Cohere updates Command R Plus, releasing the models for non-commercial use, correctly, if they release them. But you can use them commercially via their API, including advancements across fields like coding, math, reasoning, and latency. Latency, I think, is the highlight of these for at least their APIs. The highlight, is, as far as I saw, is that the Command R, which are their like smaller and much cheaper models, are now Command R Plus, sorry, they're like much smaller models, are now as fast as their previous Command R fast models. Let me see if I said this correctly. Command R Plus, which is their much smarter model, is now as fast as their previous Command R, which is their super fast and cheap model. The throughput is halved from, what is that, 2 seconds to 1 second, which is crazy. Niklas, you had the chance to play with them now that they're on Hugging Face?
Yeah. Honestly, I was surprised in some ways because I would expect Cohere models to be like really heavily regulated, but no, they were actually very obedient to your system prompts, to whatever you wanted to do. But I've just been so much spoiled by the Mistral Large 123B fine tunes that now it makes everything else, puts it as I just don't want to use anything else. So yeah, it's not better than Mistral Large 123B, but for most people, because when you quantize it, you get this down to 50 something megs. So if you have a 64 meg RAM, much newer laptop, you can actually run it. It's quite a bit faster and more practical to run. I have not tested. I have yet to test the entire RAG functionality because it might actually deploy that in production for clients if it performs well at as it should, because that's what they've optimized it for. The one thing I'm missing is, I know maybe it didn't do that great on the benchmarks, but we also don't care about the benchmarks as much anymore. So if you guys could post them, then at least we'll know whether it's like worth investing time in fine-tuning it for personal purposes, or just so we know better what to use it for. So it would be nice to have benchmarks on it, even if they're not like leading. That's the one thing. But overall, I really did like it that it's now an obedient model. It runs fairly fast on a Mac Ultra, which is you're going to $5,000 or and up. Yeah, so it is actually a suitable model for running private inference, like for your business.
Yeah, so the license
stuff. Yeah.
So as you guys see, even where I do this professionally, week after week, I can miss some stuff. It's on Hugging Face, and it's completely correct. License is CC by NC, so non-commercial, but you can download this. 32 billion parameter is the Command R version of 0824, 128K context length. The evals were not released. The comparison to the previous Command R was released. 62% prefer it for general tasks. 70% prefer it for code versus the previous Command R, 64 prefer it for STEM, and they claim that the Command R, the smaller version, the fastest version right now, is comparable to the previous Command R Plus. So this current Command R is comparable to the previous Command R Plus, but it's now twice faster in throughput and half in latency. So it's improved model, but it's also fast, smarter than the previous model. Wolfram, go ahead. Do you have a chance to look at it? What's your folks say about this?
Just wanted to say that I was very happy because I have been waiting for this for a long time, and the original Command R Plus was my favorite local model for a very long time. And it was definitely, it felt like a local Claude, I was always saying, like a Claude Opus at the time. So I don't know how they trained it, but it was excellent. And like Nisten said, it follows your system prompt perfectly. The prompt format is excellent for rack optimized. And I love this model, so I was really waiting for the new one. I haven't tested it much because it's not working for me at the moment. There's a known issue with the Excel 2 format quantizations, and I'm trying to get that fixed with somebody who quantized it. I made a quant of it myself, where I noticed it, so I downloaded some other quants with the Excel 2 format, and they all have the problem. In a specific setup, which affects me, and it has been reproduced. But it's a great model, and I also have to say, like Nisten, the Mistral model, the large 2, 123B, that is my current favorite locally, and I wanted to make a comparison between the two, but I first have to get the technical issues solved. So, as I said, it's been a week of technical issues here, unfortunately. But
so
yeah,
I see. So they released this model, but great models, but still technically hard to run them locally, but can run on API and does run on API. The new command R is 15 cents per million tokens on the input and 60 cents on the output. Command R plus is 2.5 on the input and 10 on the output. Additional things that they've added is structured outputs. Like we said, also Google added structured outputs. I didn't actually talk about this. I talked about this in the TLDR. But structured outputs is great. Improve accuracy of JSON generations. Better instruction followings, which they also always great. They are also multilingual like crazy. They've been trained on 23 languages and evaluated on 10. And they have always been great for multi-turn function calling and single-step tool use and also multi-step tool use as well for agents. So these models were maybe leading the charge in these models for a while, and they're working on templates for those as well. So definitely give them a try. Nisten, go ahead as well. But these models look super cool, and shout out to Cohere for working on those and dropping them like a week ago. And hopefully the technical issues will get solved.
Yeah, may have like just mildly breaking, not really news, but releases later on tonight. But before that, I want to say, if anyone here from Hugging Face, there's usually a few people, please speed up the things with the leaderboard. We need to have the Cohere models in there. We need Meta 405B. I was able to take one of the recent fine tunes from Maziar and from RX, which they did a small Frankenstein of Quen 72B, and those are like the top 5 models globally right now on the leaderboard, and was able to do like mixed 4-bit and 8-bit compression, which ended up being better than FP8 while being at like 60% the size of FP8. So there's some releases there. I also presented at Cohere offices for quantizing, like doing like mixed quants of the older Command R. So now I got to redo those. But just based on what Wolfram was saying, you can run the model on Llama CPP. You can just run it on plain Llama CPP. It's just XLlama is smaller and faster, but they'll get sorted out. But it's already just either look up like Bartowski or Mr. Ardemacher on Hugging Face, and they're the ones that they usually post the most often. Like I just make like CPU quants and stuff here and there. But yes, you can run this fully privately on your own. And there are so these are like the 3 top choices now. You have the Mistral 123B, the Magnum fine-tune from Alpen. You have this one, Cohere, and also a lot of the CTO of Hugging Face really like using this one, and some other people from there, older version. And then you have the top Quen fine-tune, so either the Calm or the RX, I forgot his full name. So yeah, these are like the top choices right now, and they're honestly getting very good. Like they're surpassing Claude Opus to the point where it just feels like the old Claude Opus. It's just pretty nuts, actually.
Which is, speaking of Claude Opus, where's 3.5? But yeah, moving on. So shout out to Cohere for these releases. We will be testing them more, but it looks like they're really good. And shout out for folks. Hopefully we'll get Sandra from Cohere at some point to talk about the use cases of these. I know she's listening to the podcast on her off time. Google, 3 things from Google. 1, super quick, structured outputs finally. You can get structured outputs from Google, get JSON output from the AI Studio. AI Studio got a bunch of updates. You can now test your function calling in the AI Studio, which is dope. I think structured output is better than this. And Google together with DeepMind is also something that I want to cover. They just released a new paper called Alpha Proteo. It was literally today before the show. So we don't have a lot of time to prepare for this. I had a chance to read maybe the brief, but basically AlphaFold was the huge thing a long time ago from DeepMind, talking about like folding proteins and projecting folding proteins, which was huge. And now Alpha Proteo is their new system for designing protein binders, how these proteins bind together to molecules. They achieve 3 to 300-fold better binding affinities and higher experimental success rates than the best existing models on 7 target proteins. 3 to 300-fold better bindings. Obviously, when they release something, they don't joke around. Don't have a lot of knowledge in this area. We often have Tanish here or some other folks who are more versed in this area to chat about this. We didn't have a chance to invite them yet because this literally dropped as we were planning. However, we have, you may know, 2-minute papers on YouTube. 2-minute papers. Dr. Corolli is an incredible explainer. And the reason I know about this is that I follow Dr. Corolli from 2-minute papers, and he had a chance to actually get some time with this paper before and had an exclusive video up. I would recommend and add to the show notes that you go and watch his video on this paper, and he will tell you all about this. This is not a sponsored post from him. I met him once at our Weights and Biases conference. He's great, but I just saw the preamble for his video, and he will explain absolutely way better than I could because he also got early access. But an incredible move from DeepMind. Folks on stage here, any chance you had a super quick reaction to Alpha Proteo or what this could mean in terms of protein bindings? No is a great answer.
There's actually some new startups that are going in this field simply because Google had heavily restricted the API side. So it just pushed all of these researchers in biomedical to learn how to train a diffusion model. So it just started being asked about this stuff from people who never even really bothered touching Python code. So it's been very interesting in the field. Like this could have widespread benefits, like in new proteins, new medicines being made, and it's very hard to measure as well.
Wasn't AlphaFold used for COVID vaccine to significantly speed this up? I heard this in a space or something.
I'm not qualified.
I heard this in the space. I'm not sure. I think I heard this in the space with Gary Marcus, and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good reaction to why AI is cool. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily know directly. Another breaking news. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. Breaking news from Replit, folks. Replit just launched a Replit agent that runs inside Replit and basically like a version of Cursor inside Replit. Is that what it looks like? Amjad Massa just launched this on his own, with a video, and it looks like, it's very interesting. Maximus, who's listening to the show right now, is already testing it, and Amjad just retweeted him. Maximus, so feel free to come up and tell us all about this if you can, if you're not too busy building with it. But let's see what folks are already building sign-up page with a database and a backend. So basically, it looks like Replit already had, I don't know, I'm not actually a Replit user, but folks on stage, feel free to chime in if you are. Replit already had completion. They've trained their own models. I know they fine-tune a lot of models. They are heavy into AI. So an agent move from them could be very interesting, specifically because the latest rise with cursor-focused excitement was very interesting. So I'm very interested in seeing how this develops. Let me get some folks up here who can give us some commentary.
Remember that any model that Replit goes, they have 100 million users, and I don't know how many active. It's over 10 million that are going to use it that week. So it's a pretty wide deployment.
That's a big deal. Welcome to the stage. I think your first time on stage, but we've shared your work before.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex. I'm generally a Replit user, and I just love it for deployment. And the one thing I never want to do is to manage environments. But so I've just been trying the AI assistant, the software engineer assistant, and it feels really good. And they showed it as a kind of early release, but it already seems to work really well. So I've just been mocking up a little app, a prototype I was going to do for work anyway. And yeah, it feels excellent. I haven't tried a lot of the new fancy ones, so I can't really compare, but this feels really good.
So give us maybe for folks who never use Replit, but maybe use like VS Code for coding. Oh, I see Maximus here. But give us maybe what's the difference between my like VS Code and Replit, which is in the cloud. You said you use it for deployment.
Yeah, so the big difference is that they take care of all the environment management. So I can basically just open a template for Python and they just do everything for you. So you can say, oh, I need these packages, and they just install it, manage it. They also made the deployments really good as well. So you can provision a database, you can deploy, and you need to know what you're doing a little bit, but generally it's all there for you. So if you want a quick project, I don't really know a better way of doing it.
Oh, wow. All right. Okay, I want to welcome Maximus as well. Maximus, you're the one who posted about this, and now you've been retweeted by the CEO of Replit, and you already built something with this. Give us your quick thoughts on this breaking news from Replit about their AI agent. What did you build? What it is?
I've been complaining because all the ingredients were there. It seemed like a no-brainer to me, and so I was tweeting them like, hey, why hasn't this been deployed yet? And turns out they were actually working on it behind the scenes, and I'm happy to see it finally come to light.
So what did they release?
It seems like a Devin or like a agentic coder for you. So basically, I've literally just used it once, but you type in what you want and it cooks it up. That's pretty much it. And like in my video, that's less than 5 minutes, and it deployed that SaaS landing page in less than 5 minutes.
And so it takes into account the fact that there's like database as well involved, and it's all deployed as well?
Yeah, like I could hit deploy right now and just deploy that page if I wanted to. I didn't, but yeah, I don't know if you have a Replit account, but I
will immediately after this.
Yeah, for sure.
Immediately after this, I will. Because folks who are listening to this, there's been a lot of excitement about Cursor. Cursor helps me locally. And then I still have to figure out how I'm going to put this on production.
So I was watching the Cursor Replit SSH type thing or whatever, and it seemed like a kind of a really buggy workaround. And I was like, man, just another IDE I got to manage. And I love Cursor. I use Cursor. I use Continue, Aider. Like I'm playing with them all. But I do Replit because it's an all-in-one type thing. And I'm not sponsored by them or none of that stuff. I'm just the end user. But like I said, I've been bitching at them for a while now. What are you guys doing? Yeah. They were cooking. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Maximus, thank you for coming up. Thank you for coming up. So we have breaking news from Replit, folks. Replit launches agent. We know that they've been training. So they have, listen, you said 100 million users or so. We know they've been training models. They've been auto-completing for a while. Amjad has been considered like a persona in AI world.
Yeah.
Listen.
I learned JavaScript on Replit, and I used to use it like on my phone whenever I didn't have anything else around. So this will probably... I can't wait to try, because this might actually be the best agentic coder you can run while holding it with one hand. This is going to be interesting because they can do that. I remember a lot.
Oh, right. They have like mobile as well, right?
They have like
people code from
the best one, actually. Yeah. There might be more people in the world coding from their phones, like when we factor in like kids in other countries, than there are on laptops. Like it's messed up, actually.
Oh. Yeah. So building from mobile and deploying straight from your porcelain throne now is going to be a thing. That's incredible. Folks, we're almost at time. We've covered like a bunch of stuff. The only thing that we didn't get to is this week's Buzz, a category where I talk about weights and biases things, and also AI, art, and diffusion. So I'll cover both of them super quick, and then we'll get to TLDR. Unless I missed anything else, let me super quickly see. No, I think we've covered most of it. We also, I promise you a surprise, but it looks like our folks, and I said in the beginning, if it launches, but it seems like they maybe ran into a little bit of issues. Super quick on this week's Buzz, a category where I talk about weights and biases stuff. If you are in Bay Area for whatever, PyTorch conference or for Dreamforce, or you just live there, or you just want to come out there for any reason during September 19th to 22, we're having a hackathon. We're calling it Judgment Day Hackathon because the hackathon is going to be focused on LLMs as a judge. If you're running anything on production with LLMs, you know that sometimes they don't know what you want. For example, when Anthropic injects things into your Claude API and you're like, oh crap, Anthropic injected something. Why did my production app did something else? So you want to know about this. Our product Weave helps you know everything that your app did, all inputs and outputs. But then you also want to know how your models perform, and sometimes you also want to do evaluations on them. It's very problematic to do this as a user, as a human, because there's a lot of evaluations to do. And many people do this as a concept called LLM as a judge. You basically take your evaluations and then you ask another model to evaluate them. We know this sometimes as Empty Bench, I think, does this, and some other evaluations. Many companies are building those systems. They call them LLM as a judge. They build their own evaluations and then they run another LLM and say, hey, did my model on production perform well or not based on these criteria? This is basically LLM as a judge. We are going to have a hackathon that's going to be focused on folks building, hacking around LLM as a judge things, either UIs for this or improving them, improving evals, everything that you want around this area. This hackathon is called Judgment Day. We're going to have super cool prizes, great judges. As I mentioned before, Greg Comrade, the guy who came up with Needle in the Haystack, that runs the ARC Prize challenge right now. Eugene Yan, maybe one of the top world authorities on LLM as a judge, generally recently released like one of the coolest collection of essay on LLM as a judge as a concept as well. He's going to be a judge and is going to give a talk as well. He's going to come down from Seattle. I'm going to be there with all my energy as an MC. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to be there as an MC. If you're there and you are wanting to get into this idea of into this area of building LLM as a judge or learning how to evaluate your models in production, this is a great hackathon for you to learn and just meet other folks, like-minded folks. Please join. The links are going to be in the show notes as well. And we're also launching a Hacker Cup lightning competition, which I wanted to tell you about this week, and I'm probably going to tell you about next week as well, because we didn't end up having the link for it. And I think that this is it for this week's show. Oh no, last super cool thing. I will add this to the show notes, to the newsletter, so definitely subscribe to this. ByteDance launched something called Loopy Avatar, and I will go and just add this to the show notes to the top of the space for folks who are listening right here. You have to see this. Loopy Avatar looks ridiculous from ByteDance. We've talked about some of these examples before. We've talked about emo, if you guys remember, basically taking one picture and sound and animating this picture that looks like this picture is talking. So like a sound-driven picture. Folks from ByteDance just released something. It just looks ridiculous. You look at the picture they have there from Taylor Swift. Not only the lips and eyes and eyebrows move. Their system, their model, whatever, moves earrings, like the face has emotions. The vocal cords, the muscles in the neck move realistically. This is just incredible. Really worth just looking at this. Beyond looking at this, though, there's nothing else. I haven't commented. I have a screenshot of this. I emailed them and asked whether or not they're planning to release the code. They're like, no, but maybe we'll release this you'd be able to maybe play with this, but no code, because there's a potential for abuse for something like this. Very unfortunate. Emo as well wasn't released. I just want to show you how cool this looks and just how incredible this field is moving, where you can just provide one picture and completely have animated, just full incredible animation for this. Now, this is different from diffusion models. This is not taking like a image to image and running this through something like a runway diffusion model and then animated lip sync. This is different. This is a different approach, but it just looks incredible. So I wanted to highlight this. Look at those videos. It looks super, super cool. In this area of AI, art, and diffusion and video, we also have Luma Dream Machine, which is a diffusion video generator. They added keyframes, so you can now basically direct it and say, hey, in this area, I wanted to move, like zoom in closer. So now we will get like better video generations as well. What else in this area? And this is everything we've covered on ThursdAI for September 5th of 2024. I want to thank everybody who's been on stage with me, all of the guests that we had, and the co-host, Wolfram Elf, Raven Wolf. We had LDJ, the returning folks from before, and then the new guests. We had Nuo, we had Niklas from Elon AI, we had Eugene from RWKV, Amoeba GPT, and Maximus came up to talk about Replit. And generally, everybody who comes in and listens and reshares and comments to the show would not be what it is without you guys. I see a bunch of folks. I want to shout out one specific person. Lincoln, I don't know if he's still listening, but Lincoln consistently tags me in all of the new cool things. And I often get to know the cool new things in AI myself from the feed. But recently, Lincoln has been like directly tagging me the new cool stuff. And I love this. And so if all of you could also do this, that's going to be great. Shout out to Lincoln. He's the MVP of ThursdAI for the last 2 weeks. If you want to give him a follow, I'll add Lincoln in the show notes as well. Shout out to President Lin, I think is his exact URL. The ThursdAI community is incredible. The ThursdAI community happens on the show where Niklas talked to Jun Yang, and also Nuo talked to Jun Yang as well, and Nuo knows about the show because Jun Yang was here before talking about Quen. All of the things, the connections that ThursdAI enables are incredible to me, and I'm very fortunate that I'm here in the middle of this, and nothing makes me more happy than being able to facilitate those connections. So the more they happen, the more happy I am. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I know 2 hours is a lot for many, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you here next week. Personally, I'm going to take a little vacation, so I'm very excited to edit this, record the newsletter, send it out, and then I'm going to go on vacation. But ThursdAI is going to happen next week anyway. Please tag me so I'll know what happens, because I am planning to disconnect immediately after this. With that, thank you everyone for joining. Have a nice week. We'll see you here next Thursday. Cheers. Bye-bye.